And Mr. Dowdy, we are ready.
Good evening and welcome to the District 225 Board of Education meeting. Madam Secretary, would you please read the roll?
Mr. Dowdy.
Here.
Mr. Glowacki.
Present.
Ms. Mullenbeck.
Here.
Mr. O'Hare.
Here.
Ms. Segwin.
Here.
Mr. Shine.
Present.
Dr. Steinberg.
Here.
Item 2 on our agenda is approval of the agenda for this meeting. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0.
Good evening, everybody. So glad you could all join us tonight. We are now amazingly into March, heading towards spring break as our tremendous year in the Glenbrooks keeps moving forward. This evening, we'll have a relatively straightforward agenda. We will have our typical opening of community comments, followed by board and superintendent reports and our consent agenda. We then have 2 issues on our regular agenda this evening. One is our calendar study, and the second is our annual staffing plan. Again, thank you all for being here this evening. Much appreciated. We also appreciate so many people showing up. Item 4 on our agenda, item 3 on our agenda is recognition of community visitors. This is the portion of our meeting when folks from the community are invited to come and offer a couple of minutes of public comment. We always value this input very much, as we do any input that we're given other ways, whether it's by email or by phone calls, text messages, or finding us in the grocery store, whatever it is. We always appreciate the input. We do ask if you were going to address the board this evening. I know we have one person on our list. If you give us your name and address, that helps us follow up with things. We do remind people that we listen very, very carefully to what is shared with us. We do not get into a discourse, but often topics that are brought up during public comment are addressed later in the meeting during a regular agenda or a subsequent meeting. But we always take everything you say very seriously, and we very much appreciate your input. We do remind people that we respect confidentiality and privacy. We do not discuss individual employees or students. We also note that we don't control the topics as a board that are brought to our attention or the substance of them. We ask everyone to maintain civility and respect. And we also remind speakers that their comments are not protected by any automatic immunities. With that preface, I do have one name on our list this evening. I appreciate Mr. Eisenstadt, if you'd like to join us for a couple of minutes.
Thank you. Board, Paul Eisenstadt, 2029 Clover Road, that's District 31 and Elementary District, which is Field and Winkleman, feeding into Glenbrook North. So Superintendent Johns, Chairman Dowdy, Board of District 225, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. While my efforts may be futile, since as I understand, the board has decided to start school unreasonably early for the 25-26 school year and beyond, my daughter will teach next week at Glenbrook North at the Holocaust Remembrance Assembly that I cannot remain silent about a wrong that has significant impact, even if I cannot affect change. I want to speak against the earlier start date. I want to speak for the families of the 5 elementary districts that feed into District 225. It strikes me as insensitive, bordering on callousness, that the needs of the greater community, including the feeder district families, were not considered. Your decision for the earlier start ruined summer camps and family vacations. The large number of children from feeder districts and District 225 that attend overnight camps is unique and not the same as other districts. So looking to copy their actions does not apply. When campers return home, that is family time, then school starts. First semester finals have been after Christmas since District 225 has been in existence. There is no end of semester before spring break. There are no complaints about that. You come back from that and continue the semester, just as with Christmas break. The system works. You got it perfect this year and next. Why ruin it? Other consequences of the finals before Christmas action is the loss of the White Christmas concert, a bedrock annual pillar of Glenbrook North High School. You might surmise that they can simply push it back to Thanksgiving, but that then snowballs the fall concert, possibly eliminating it. It could also kill marching band, as I would imagine, having had conversations with the band administration, that they would not ask kids and families to sacrifice camp and or family time to attend band camp, as many of the band members are summer campers, and the band administrators respect that and their family values. And we would all be sad to miss out on that marching band experience. Another significant consequence is the early end in May. This has more effect on K-8 families than high school families. It is a huge imposition, and it is a few weeks before camp starts, and families would have to scramble to find care for our kids at that time. The early end in May is just as bad as the early start in August for younger families. This board makes decisions that affect all families and the community, not just high school students and not just the school year, but all 365 days of the year. I understand that the district did a survey, which I perceived as non-scientific nor fair. For one, I do not believe that you got much response from those that were not or do not have feeder school families or future families that were represented. For such a fundamental change that will be a huge disruption in the position for all families or future families, much more than just high school students. If the district insists on this, that change should be put on the November ballot and let the voters decide. At least the outcome would be from the people, not the board. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Eisenstadt. Just as a reminder, we will be actually beginning our discussions of the study later this evening. I do not believe we have anyone else, Dr. Johns, on our list for this evening, so we'll move to item 4 on our list, which are the board and superintendent reports. Dr. Johns.
Thank you, Mr. Dowdy. It is an important time of year in school districts as we undertake the sectioning and staffing process, which is a very important process because it's where we really balance instructional needs and the demands of our budget. It is a stressful time because it has impact on people and their careers and sacrifices and tough decisions have to be made. Next week, we'll talk more in depth about those impacts as we will in the future. At this point, I want to thank the administrators who've been in part of the sectioning and staffing process for the work that they've gone through. It is difficult and I really appreciate their hard work. On a related note, a week ago Saturday, we had 6 administrators and 1 teacher give up their Saturday morning to be a part of the Northwest Suburban HR Group, NWPA, as part of a job hiring fair. And it was a great success. There's tremendous candidates there. Over 450 people attended who are job seekers. And we saw a number of different individuals who could make a good addition to our district. And I'm really glad that Ed Solis, Stacy Wolf, Lauren Bonner, and Jill Serling, who's a teacher, along with Angelica Romano and Nina Yaub, all helped with the hiring fair. Angelica and Nina really made sure that we stood out amongst all the other districts. As you can imagine, with all the high school districts in this area coming together, it's a pretty competitive environment, and we were nicely shepherded through the process by Angelica and Nina. I got to introduce candidates to the interviewers. It was great to meet eager future educators as they're starting to embark their career. With that, I'm going to turn over to Dr. Georges, who's going to give us a quick update on South, to be followed by Mr. Bill.
Well, good evening. As we get started tonight, I'd like to take a moment to showcase a senior at GBS, Lauren Isaac. This past month, Lauren was honored at the Illinois Principal Association Student Recognition Breakfast. Lauren was nominated for her overall representation of our Titan values. She's a leader at GBS. She supports her struggling peers in finding resources that are available to overcome obstacles and become successful students. She's truly a role model for all Titans. And when she's not supporting her fellow classmates, she's a track star who went downstate her freshman year. She's a member of our first girls flag football team, and she just went downstate recently to help set the school record in her latest track meet. Lauren looks out for people who need help and does what's right even when other people aren't looking. She exemplifies her values, and that's why she was selected as GBS Student of the Year for this IPA award. As we're showcasing some students, I also would like to introduce you to Sophie Collin, class of 2027. I'd like to demonstrate that Sophie is skiing here, and while not a GBS sport, she is qualified to be a member of the Illinois ski team and will be representing the state of Illinois at the Western U.S. High School Championship next week. We will be cheering her on from GBS. The Team Illinois is comprised of the top 10 fastest female and male skiers in the state. So this achievement is a testament to her hard work and her dedication and skills on the slopes, and we will be cheering her on. I'd also like to share that we are incredibly proud of GBS class of 2021 alum, Sydney Wilsis. She's at Iowa State right now, and she is the NCAA Division I indoor track and field long jump national champion. So we are incredibly proud of Sydney. And, you know, we think of all of these post-secondary athletic goals our students have, but know that they really begin in moments like that photograph with Mr. Metis in the center of the court. We're kicking off spring sports. So this past Saturday, Tom Metis, the athletic director at South, hosted a very full house of our parents and students for the spring sports face-off event, where, you know, he onboards all of our students and families for the spring season. And then finally, as if the building wasn't packed enough with the spring sports face-off, this past Saturday was also our college colloquium. It was a very well-attended event. It's hosted at GBS, but it's a collaborative effort between GBN and GBS. And I just have to take a moment to give a special thanks to our college and career counselors, David Boyle at GBN, John Klassen, and Kayleen Heaton at GBS. The three of them designed this college colloquium to provide students and parents with the opportunity to attend different sessions. These sessions cover a variety of topics to prepare families for post-secondary options, and they procured both nationally and locally known speakers. They shared a variety of expertise throughout different breakout sessions that parents and families could attend to help plan for the road ahead. So it was a great weekend at South, and I'll pass it over to Mr. Bill.
Well, thank you. We have quite a few students to talk about tonight. We kicked off our annual food drive this past Saturday with Annual Day of Giving. There were about 100 students working throughout the day to collect non-perishable food items at Sunset Foods downtown Northbrook and at the Jewel on Waukegan Road. We also had students at Waterway Car Wash collecting donations. It was a great kickoff, and we're looking forward to collecting quite a bit for a worthy cause. I'm pleased to share that Glenbrook North team of Katie Carpenter, who's a senior, and Leah Goldberg, also a senior, earned second place at the Illinois Varsity State Debate Championship. Both of them were also named members of the All-State Debate Team. We also have a student who is now a published scientist. Sungman Park, a current GBN student, was published in the Aspiring Scientist for a study on, and I have no idea what this is. It's way above what I can fathom, but a study on interpreting electrocardiogram signals using a 1D CNN LSTM model. So we're looking forward to reading that and trying to understand that high-powered study. Last weekend, we have quite a few people in DECA who placed at the state competition. We are very proud of all of these people. There are quite a few, really too many to name tonight because of the board agenda, but I'm going to name a few. So we had first place winners in several areas. Anika Nangia, I'm hoping that I don't ruin all of their names. Business servicing marketing. Josh Khan, quick service restaurant management. Josh Khan again, and Nathan Stupnitsky, integrated marketing campaign service. Malini Nangia, professional selling event, and Logan Dane, hospitality and tourism professional selling. All of those were first place qualifiers. Their state competition is coming up soon. And again, there were 3 second place set of qualifiers, 4 third place qualifiers, 2 fourth place qualifiers, all in a variety of events, and 30 other student entries in the top 10.
Thank you, Mr. Bild and Dr. Georges. One thing I forgot, and he's here so we can help, we can point some attention his way. Mr. Paul Joshi is our sponsor for Glenbrook United, which is an organization that enables our students to participate in Special Olympics sponsored events. And over the weekend, he sent us an email late Saturday. So I'm assuming that's when you got back home. Sunday afternoon. Okay, when you recovered from the previous day. And he shared that our girls and boys teams took home state gold medals in the competitions from the weekend. The girls team were in the highest division and the best female team in the state. And we could not be more proud of those players. The boys were in Division 16, which is the second highest division. Obviously, there's 17, and they won state gold as well. And they've had a really tremendous year. We're all very proud of the teams. I'm very grateful for Mr. Joshi for this work because it's really important and has a real impact on important kids. So thank you. That's it, Mr. Dowdy.
Thank you, everyone, and thanks for those reports. It's always wonderful to hear. Board members, anything you want to report tonight? Okay, thank you very much again. We move to item 5 on our agenda, which is our consent agenda. Dr. Johns, any changes?
There are no changes since publication of the agenda, and everything that's a carryover from the previous meeting is the same.
Thank you very much. I'll entertain a motion then to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none?
Mr. Dowdy?
Yes?
Mr. Glowacki?
Yes.
Ms. Mullenbeck?
Yes.
Mr. O'Hara?
Yes.
Ms. Segwin?
Yes.
Mr. Shine?
Yes.
Dr. Steinberg?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
We now move to our item 6, which is our discussion and action agenda. We have 2 items I mentioned before. The first one is our school year calendar study and revised school calendar preparation guidelines for 25-26. So that's a year from this August when we well, it's that school year. So Dr. Johns, you want to introduce?
Thank you, Mr. Dowdy. I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Adrizi, who has led a very comprehensive study that has taken several months. And Dr. Adrizi and her committee, part of who are represented this evening, will give us an update on what they've learned and recommendations that they're making. Dr. Adrizi.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here tonight. I could have not done the study without the amazing help of the committee. The committee consisted of parents, students, teachers, and administrators all coming together, creating surveys, evaluating the data, and moving forward collectively and making a recommendation. So why did we conduct the study? I came in front of you in November and asked to conduct the study. During the hold on before I go back, because I have very important people sitting right behind me, which were part of the committee. In the audience are also committee members, but with me here presenting are 4 people. We have Cody Halberstadt, who is an IS and superintendent intern during this entire study. Kenneth McCarthy, who is a freshman at GBS. Paul Joshi, special education teacher at Off Campus, and Debbie Cohen, English teacher in the Academy in Glenbrook South. All of them will take an important part during this presentation, and I will hand over the microphone to them shortly. So I was asked to, I brought forward the study to you in November, asking for the feasibility of ending semester 1 prior to winter break. Looking at the flexible parts of the calendar, such as holidays, length of semester, and start date. During the 22-23 school years, multiple requests were made at the administration and at the building level asking to conduct the study, specifically concerned about student well-being, alignment with surrounding districts, and providing 7 semester transcripts for college admissions and scholarships. Part of the study were also our sender districts. Over 480 parents from sender districts did respond to our survey, which was over 5,000 people overall responding. Sender district parents have responded over 80% favorably of ending semester 1 prior to winter break. This is just a preview because way more about the study and the surveys will come from my committee members. Here's a little bit of the timeline. I came to you in November asking for the study. In January, the committee was assembled and we developed the surveys sending out. The surveys went out on January 24th and were open for about 2 weeks till February 5th. Over 5,000 respondents were part of these surveys. The committee got back together, analyzed these survey results, and we noticed we needed to ask deeper questions. So from the survey results and the data analyzed, we looked into focus groups. We then moved forward with 3 focus groups: parents, students, and teachers of semester-long courses. With all the data combined, surveys, focus group, principal advisory groups, we came back together, analyzed the data, synthesized it, and came up with the calendar guidelines, which we are presenting tonight. Tonight, you will not only hear the findings, but also the guidelines. Then on April 8th, another committee will take these guidelines and develop the school calendar for the 25-26 school year. But now I'm going to hand it over to Kenneth, who's going to present the key findings of the survey.
Well, thank you, Dr. Adrizi, for that wonderful introduction.
If anything, none of us would be here able to present this data to the board without your excellence and your dedication to the Glenbrook community. So on behalf of the entirety of the community, we really appreciate all the work that you have done. A common ground that was established among the 5,000 respondents who partook in this survey is this preference that you see here for finals to be completed prior to winter break. This data shows that almost 4 out of 5 community members that we surveyed preferred this. There are several benefits to this, advantages to this, that these respondents expressed. Number one, finals before break would reduce stress and improve well-being for students during the holiday period so that students may have time to spend time with their family members and their friends. Number two, it would allow for a true break, one that is unencumbered by the stress of final examinations. 3, it prevents the loss of knowledge and enables better retainment of material from semester 1 that otherwise may be lost over an extended winter break. Number 4, the particular advantage of having first semester grades available early for college applications that is particularly pertinent to our seniors within their 7th semester here at Glenbrook South or Glenbrook North who are applying for colleges or scholarships. And also when we spoke with our athletic directors, number 5, they indicated that alignment with peer schools would translate to coordinating more alignment in competitions with the Central Suburban League. However, to accommodate for this preference for transitioning to having finals held before winter break, there are some differences among community members on how it's best to approach this when it comes to constructing a calendar. And so we have Ms. Cohen to tell you more.
Thank you, Kenneth. Stand on my tiptoes. So it turns out that respondents to the survey like the idea of ending. You don't have to stand on the tiptoes. I help you. Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm used to it. Thank you. They prefer having the end of the semester actually coinciding with the beginning of winter break, but respondents also prefer not to begin school the first week in August, right? And so unfortunately, it's actually very difficult to honor both of those preferences at the same time without a need for compromise. The survey indicated that an early start to the school year would provide a more balanced academic year in terms of balance between length of semesters, but it has an impact on summer activities and family vacations. And so that early August start does maintain a perfectly balanced number of days in each semester. But again, the needs of the community in terms of preserving summertime and keeping those final exams before break cause us to ask some difficult questions of ourselves and of our focus groups that we conducted with teachers, parents, and students once we recognized that there was some tension in between these 2 data points. So we asked what's necessary to maintain the academic of the semester-long courses, what is necessary to maintain equity in academic experiences between semester 1 and semester 2, and what's necessary to maintain state mandated class hours in courses such as driver's education. So trying to keep all of those competing interests, for lack of a better term, in mind, we did put this to focus group members, and then the committee decided on the following guidelines that we will present to you now for your consideration.
So the consensus from the committee are the following calendar guideline recommendations for the start and end of the school year. 1, semester 1 shall end prior to winter break. 2, the school year shall start no earlier than the full week of August. 3, for academic purposes, the semesters will have an imbalance no greater than 4 to 8 school days. And 4, while adhering to these guidelines, all efforts we made
to start the school year as late in August as possible while minimizing semester imbalance.
The journey described to you this evening represented a multifaceted approach to data collection and decision-making. It represents the collective effort of students, parents, teachers, and administrators engaging in some of the key tenets of collaborative practices, thoughtful discussions, data design, collection, and analysis, inquiry, feedback loops, and perhaps most importantly, intentional listening. The results of which are intended to honor the voices of all stakeholder groups and maintain the exceptional academic, athletic, activity, and arts-based educational experiences that the Glenbrook community has come to expect. Throughout this venture, our committee was also focused on the process and considerations for a smooth implementation of new school calendar guidelines within our learning community. To accomplish this, the committee made several proposals for future consideration. They include leveraging our communication channels to emphasize the rationale behind this calendar change early and often, allowing time for our community and partners to adjust while highlighting benefits and addressing concerns. They recommended a review of our current final exam practices and use of a specialized schedule, what's often referred to as finals week. We recommended providing professional learning and coaching support for our teachers of semester-long courses, considering additional time for grade finalization and semester planning between first and second semesters. And finally, working collaboratively with our staff, students, and community to understand and address concerns around non-academic programs, traditions, and events to ensure our continued success in building culture and community partnerships.
So the administration and the amazing committee I had the honor of working with recommends that the Board of Education approves these revised school calendar preparation guidelines as presented as part of the March 18th consent agenda.
So Dr. Idrisi and committee members, thank you, first of all, for all of your work and leadership. I know you represent the head of an enormous amount of work underneath, the breadth of participation, the depth of thinking, the care are hallmarks of what we try to do with everything in this district. And this is a big issue. It's a major issue to our community. And you're recommending what is a major change, but one that took a lot of thinking. And so I think it's our third run at this. And then that shows generally over that spread of time, the deliberation that we typically use to address issues in this district. And we're proud of that. And it's part of the reason that we were able to stay stable and yet evolve intelligently and thoughtfully. So thank you very much for all of your work on this. I ask board members if they have some questions and comments at this point. In terms of just navigation on this, we're going to discuss it at this meeting. At this point, is this slotted to come back to us in particular board meeting for potentially on consent if there's consensus with the board?
Yeah, depending on how the nature of this conversation goes and the questions that may occur that we're either able to answer tonight or unable to answer tonight, we're seeing bringing this back potentially for consent on March 18th. Otherwise, we can continue the discussion on that day if necessary.
Okay, that's fine. So there's no limit, folks, but talk tonight, but we'll see where we end at that, if that works. So I'm going to start over here. Ms. Mellenbuck, do you have any questions or comments?
I do, but I would like to start by saying that I understand that this was a major undertaking for the committee, and I appreciate all the hard work that you put into this, because I know that it's an issue that's very important, not just to, the folks here at the Glenbrooks, but to the whole community, and that you reached out to all those stakeholders. It's an enormous project. I guess I had one question and comment that kind of go together. I know that one of the things that's driving the guidelines that you've proposed is the fact that the Glenbrooks, unlike some of the schools that are around us, have so many semester-long courses. And I do see that in the guidelines, you have suggested that there would be no greater than 4 to 8 school days in balance. And I just want to make sure I understand, we're on a block system, right? So that means at the outside, that would be 4 classes. Correct? Okay. But that's still, 2 weeks of class. And I'm struggling, I guess, to understand how we're going to deal with how exactly does that work? I guess I'd like to understand how, if you have a class that meets in the fall semester that is 2 weeks shorter than the spring semester, do we only offer that course once a year then, or is it not? I guess I'm trying to figure out how that would play out in terms of the logistics of it. One thing, that's my question. And then I think my comment is that I really don't think that there's a broad understanding in the community that this is an issue. And back to the point you were saying before about, just giving the community a chance to get familiar with the concepts and see how it would play out in their lives. At least some of the feedback that I've been getting from people is they just don't understand why we can't just have very imbalanced semesters. And I think once that point is made better, they might be able to reflect upon these guidelines and see how they are a good compromise. So, but back to my question, I guess, is how does that play out then? If we still have imbalanced semesters, even if it's only 2 weeks, how does that work with our semester-long classes?
Yeah, feel free to chime in case I miss anything. But that was part of our focus group questions. We gathered teachers of semester-long classes from both schools and asked how much of an imbalance is too much of an imbalance, and what would have to give if there's a greater imbalance. So we got those questions from the teachers within the buildings. 4 to 8 days, 8 days is a max they would be willing. Anything beyond that moves the integrity of the curriculum, especially when we're looking at driver's ed, where they have a certain number of hours they have to do behind the wheel, and say that's the exact math and how to calculate it on making sure we're hitting the behind the wheels time and the in classroom time. So 8 is definitely not the preferred number of days from any semester long teachers. For the guidelines, it would give flexibility if we had to go there. But as you also notice in the guidelines, we always ask for minimal amount. I'm going to go back here, minimizing the semester imbalance. During the focus groups, or after we did the focus groups with the teachers, we learned what would have to give if there truly is an imbalance. There were certain points like drivers as we can't have an imbalance, this is what we need, and we can't waver from that. Other parts, if the imbalance becomes too great, it would be impacting certain units of the semester. That would need, teachers would need professional development and time over time to relook at their course and the course curriculum to see what could be adjusted to make this work if the imbalance becomes too great. That's why in the guidelines we said multiple times it shouldn't become greater. The moment we explain to parents in the focus groups what an imbalanced semester means and what maybe some students would get first semester versus second semester or vice versa, parents very quickly came to the conclusion of, we want to keep the integrity of our curriculum. We want to keep what we have. And therefore, if that means starting the school year earlier, that would be a compromise willing to make, having that understanding. Anything you want to add?
Does that mean that from year to year, the curriculum might be changing in these classes? Like if we have 1 year where we only have to, if we were to adopt these guidelines, 1 year it's 4 classes, 1 year it's 8 classes. That's a difference of.
So this year in the 23-24 school year, we have a perfectly balanced calendar of 89 days each semester. But knowing that we also have second semester 2 days of state testing. So the in itself is right now an imbalance. If you look at calendars from previous years, not always did we have a perfectly balanced calendar. So there is a range of what teachers can be flexible with, and there's a maximum we should not go over. So we always want to try to minimize the imbalance.
Thank you.
Mr. O'Hara.
Yeah, and I'm sorry to keep on the same horse kind of, but is there I know you talked to the teachers here, is there a standard, like an international standard or any sort of standard as to what the deviation could be, nationally or statewide, or what type of standards are there for that?
So there's a curriculum where we have to meet, especially when I'm going back to driver's ed. There's definitely standards and hours we have to meet. And driver's ed is typically a semester-long course in other districts as well. When we did research what other districts are doing, the Glenbrooks are unique in the fact that we have multiple semester-long courses. Some of them, or a lot of them, are in our CTE and fine and performing in our fine arts department. You want to address it? We have an English teacher come up.
Really quickly, in terms of comparing to what's going on in our neighboring districts, there's a huge range. And it doesn't appear to me, I'm not certain, that there is a rule about where you can divide your semesters. So for example, I think there's a discrepancy between first semester and second semester at New Trier of like almost 16 days. And we have a perfect balance. So in terms of guidelines, I would surmise that it would be at least that range. So I just want to add.
Okay, and they're doing driver's ed as well, because driver's ed seems to be the one that really needs, I mean, you don't get those hours in, you can't go take your test, and then can't drive yourself to school, then I still have to drive you to school, and that's a problem for me, and I don't like it. So.
So this is really about Mr. O'Hara.
So,
Okay.
but fundamentally, I could see that being one of those ones that's much more set in stone. And would we start that potentially then earlier? Could you start that one first then and just have the driver's ed students start earlier? Is that what you're thinking?
The teachers definitely became creative, but bottom line, they said we need 40 days. So 80 days, 40 blocks, 40 class times to meet. That's a bare minimum they can handle, which came up to the conclusion of 4 to 8 school days.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Galecki.
Well, thank you again to everyone that was involved in the study. I know this has been a challenge that we've been wrestling with for a number of years, and there's not just the pressures of what's going on in the community, but this was also in response to what's going on in the outside world. I'm kind of turning more to the colleges and impact on higher education. And one thing I didn't see in this report, but it'd be helpful if the group could confirm this, the increase in college applications. And if I'm not mistaken, I think there have been quotes of anything from 40 to 50% from pre-COVID. They've kind of taken the COVID years out of a lot of the studies to post-COVID, most recently being, as high as 40, 50%. The issue there is all the early people admitted, the schools are wrestling with this. So they're, instead of allowing how the Common App was to allow for quicker admittance, are pushing back and waiting. Now we need more information about the students, where our children are now at a disadvantage at times in certain schools because they're waiting for that 7th semester set of grades, which are after many of the January deadlines. You can provide the class and everything, but if we could have some information about what those increases are, that would help in terms of the further discussion as well too. So that'd be a piece of information that'd be helpful. And I appreciate that, in the ideal situation, if I understand these guidelines, in the perfect world, we will have balanced semesters. We start late in August. We end as we do normally in June, and we just take a break, give the kids a clean slate to finish and do that versus all the stress and trepidation that goes on with them trying to wrestle between that and staying involved with a lot of activities that are also across school districts. Having artists and athletes in actually they wear both hats and stuff. They wrestled with that. They wanted to be everything to everyone. And that just creates a lot of stress on them, or they just had to make hard decisions at the end of the day going, what am I going to give up? Which is unfortunate. You don't want to put them in that situation, but it is a real, that's when then we up our social counseling. And there are costs with this, and I appreciate the group looking at all these aspects. The numbers, I guess, I appreciate in here as well too. I found very helpful. So yeah, as I understand, in certain years, we will have a perfectly balanced school year based on how the calendar falls, what holidays are recognized, what's on a weekend, what's not. And in others, we may have the guidelines would say, you got to make the calendar work for this 4-day. In our history, do you recall when we've had such an imbalance of more than 8 and stuff?
I cannot, but I could look into that. I know that this year is perfectly balanced.
Yeah,
but it
this
has
year
not
was
always been
kind of
like that.
like a fortunate one and everything.
Yeah, if I can, certainly since we've had the block schedule at both schools, the most of an imbalance we'd have would be a day.
Okay.
So, and back to the old days of, I imagine we had a straight 8 here would be less material because it's not a blue and gold or a green and gold calendar.
Yeah, because at one point we had one building, I guess,
Yes.
south doing block and then north not. and
Doing
so
a
that-
straight schedule. Yeah. So, and there it would have been a very balanced as well.
Okay. I think that's all the questions I have for now. I'll shoot an email before if there's anything additional, but I do again appreciate the efforts for this because it is a tough situation and we're trying to make sure that all the factors are worked in and everything.
Thank you, Mr. Black. Mr. Shine?
Hello. I'm interested, I'd like to hear some feedback specifically from the that we received from the elementary schools.
Mhm.
And then also, I think it's interesting that on, let's see, sort of page number here, it looks like page 24. The question is, what aspects of this calendar option do you like most? And this is in reference to number 3. The second most favorable response was start of the school year. And that is not what I would have expected. I would have expected the one that is most popular, which is conclusion date of each semester. But to also, it sort of flies in the face of, we really don't want to start early. It's almost like, well, we're okay with that because we're getting these other benefits that we like. So we're willing to accept what I would think would be less comfortable, less desirable starting early. And did you guys talk about that at all? Because to me, that's if I had to hypothesize about what the conclusions would be, that wouldn't be the one. I wouldn't think that would be the outcome. Thank you.
So to address your first question for the sender districts, once we've created the survey, all the communication director as our sender districts have sent out the survey through their regular communication channels to their community. From that, we received over 480 responses from parents of sender districts or respondents who identified as themselves as parents of having a student in one of our sender districts. As you see here on the slide, 79% responded favorably. That's all 5,000 participants overall. When we dug down into the data and looked at where teachers responded, parents responded, actually looking at our sender districts, that was the highest number, if I recall correctly, was over 80% favorably in ending semester 1 prior to winter break. I can look up the exact number. I believe it was 83%.
Would you take, do you think those are parents with students in the elementaries and the high school? That's an odd number also to me.
The question I believe was worded with how do you most likely associate with the answer. So I'm hoping that a parent of a high schooler would have responded, I'm a parent of a high schooler, and a parent of a sender district would have responded that way.
Okay.
To your second question, yes, you're absolutely right. That's why we had to move forward with the focus question. So Ms. Cohen spoke about it. We got our survey results back and we found, yes, favorably ending semester 1 prior to winter break, but also favorably start as late as possible, which were two things which didn't work together. Hold on, that's why here's a beautiful arrow. So we needed to, am I answering your question?
You are, except the response is, I'm okay starting earlier.
That was when you're referring to calendar option 2, correct? 3. Calendar option 3 starts.
That's the preferred.
Yeah.
That's the preferred is 3. Yeah,
Correct.
so they're talking about 3.
Calendar option 3 starts the second full week of August in 2025. That was the option, I believe, was the start date of August 14th. That was a preferred calendar overall. Yes. When the responses, the written responses, they were still definitely starting later because we had a question later on asking which week would you like to start? There, the favorite response was week 3. And that was not one of the calendar options given in that survey. That's why we came together at a committee. It's like, we didn't work this out very well and needed to go into focus groups with additional questions.
So if driver's ed, and there must, maybe there's another, but it sounds like driver's ed is driving some of the mathematics here of the dates. Because you just said you have to have X number of hours of driver's ed to make this work. Therefore, you have to start on X date. Is there a model where driver's ed is handled differently? So let's say in those students in driver's ed, perhaps would have to start earlier, but the rest of the cohort did not, because you don't face the same statutory limitations on the other courses.
So driver's ed I used as an example frequently because they have very tangible numbers. But not only driver's ed, but also our health curriculum, consumer ed, civics, AP Gov. These are the semester-long courses which are also impacted. The reason why I've used driver's ed over and over, because they gave me very tangible numbers. For those other curriculums which are semester-long, like our health curriculum, which is really packed with a lot of state standards which need to be covered in a one semester, they would also greatly be impacted. Our AP US government also spoke out, civics spoke a lot about, there's a lot of things we would like to address and work with our students on the curriculum. So not only driver's ed, but also many other semester-long teachers of courses, fine arts, CTE, all expressed that there's a need of balancing it.
Dr. Steinberg?
Thank you. First, as everybody said, thank you for doing this. And also, thank you to the administration, because some of us have been asking for many years to go back into this subject, and finally it's happening, at least the study and the decision to be made, whatever way we land. So personally, I highly appreciate it, because some things we go over all the time, but some things sometimes get dormant and at some point come back. So this should be said.
We appreciate your virtuous patience. Thank you.
I'm trying to continue the same way. I cannot guarantee. That's one point. And it's very hard. And as you said, and I think balancing is really important. Though I have, looking at data, sometimes you can look at it from different ways. And to say that 50% of the courses are semester-long courses doesn't mean that every student takes a 50% load of a semester long. So in terms of combinations, anecdotally, but we know that not every student does driver's ed with us, for example. We know that a lot of students take, which one is the one that they pick for summer so they don't take it during the year? Civics. Yeah, a lot of courses students take at different times. So I know we are late into this, but I will observe the data in a different way, because the reality is that for the percentage of students that take year-long courses, moving or not moving, semesters in balance, it won't make a difference. You put a unit here or there. Then anecdotally as well, I know that many semester-long courses have a follow-up course that is also a semester long for people that decide to go more into a particular kind of subject. For those courses that are paired, again, the difference will be if you have an imbalanced semester is that you move a unit from one to the other. Yes, you can make the point that some people won't follow to whatever it is, number 2 or B or C, but you will have a reasonable number of people that will do it. To the point that I think Mr. O'Hara and Mr. Shine were trying to make, if there's no difference for the year-long courses, playfully you can say that the first week of the year, whenever you have that first week of the year, you leave it only for the semester-long courses, because then you have double the amount of time. So in 1 week, you cover 2. So instead of moving 2 weeks backward, you can move only 1 week backward and still cover the exact amount of hours and get the semester balance as you had before. It's a scheduling nightmare for the people who are sitting there for the first week. But question being asked, are we willing to let the majority of the district that may be happy with finishing early, but may not be as happy with having to start 2 weeks early, and find a compromise where we can find a schedule that works for everybody without breaking too much? And I know it's impossible to be sensitive with everybody. And I think some parents, one we had today, and some people will talk about the holidays, and I guess everybody should be understood. But the majority wants one thing. I think we all should leave to whatever, trying to accommodate the majority of what the majority of people wants. But maybe we can find a way not to be so disruptive at the beginning that could help everybody. I don't know. I don't know if it's easy for me to say it in this chair versus the people who are sitting there who have to come up with the schedule. But the reality is that if you take a semester-long course and you do twice 1 week, you are doing the same as 2 weeks, and you're not disrupting anybody. So maybe that would be my only question. With everything else, as I said, I really appreciate putting all your heads together.
Mr. President, I would just remember my question that I had previously that based off that, if we can include what are the semester-long classes in the report and everything, that would be very helpful as well too, just so we have concrete besides driver's ed, civics and these to see, because I know that was a point that how do we compare against some of the other districts? And if I overlooked it in here, I apologize if it was one of the tabs that I should have clicked over to.
In the report, you will see the number of semester-long courses and the enrollment slash sections of these semester-long courses.
Okay.
If you're asking for a list of the names of the courses, I can easily provide
Yeah,
that.
that would, in the subsequent, that would be, thank you so much.
No,
Mr.
no,
President.
no problem. Ms. Siegel.
Yeah, I would just echo what everybody else said. I'd love to see the list of the semester-long classes, because it's just interesting to think about that and how many students it affects. I mean, is it just broadly, is it 50% of students that it affects? Is it 10%? I mean, what percentage is it?
So that's a good question. I think it often depends on what year you are enrolled. So if you're looking at sophomore year, we have our health curriculum sophomore year,
Right.
which is a 1 semester long class. So it affects 100% of our sophomores who are
Okay.
taking that course. Oftentimes in our elective classes in CTE and fine arts, depending on where the enrollment is, that could be freshman through senior, who could be part of that. Our AP Gov class, that's junior senior curriculum. So it's hard to, it depends on which year in school you're enrolled and what are your interests are in the courses you're selected. Dr. Joyces have given me a wonderful section, so I'm going to send it over to her because she has done a lot of sections with
So-
the course semester long courses.
The challenge with semester-long classes is that, as Dr. Drizzy said, it varies based on not only your year, but the semester by which you're involved in that course. So the example she gave for health, that's only impacting your sophomores half of the year. There's other things to consider when you look at that data about the number of semester courses, is that it might look like a lot of classes, but they're stacked in the master schedule. So you might see the list of 4 different semester courses, but they all only are combined into one section of one class. So that's why that percentage of students in a semester class looks lower than the number of classes overall. And that's natural and normal, and most schools do that. What I mean by stacked is, I can use an example. I was
Hand signals.
I was
right?
watching
Yeah.
your face. So for example, we might have multiple levels of broadcasting, and the students get different credits for the 300, 400, and 500 level of broadcasting. They're all advanced students. They all do different projects, but in one blue block 3, you might have broadcasting 300, 400, and 500 all combined into one section of students. So it might look like you have 3 different semester-long classes all impacted in terms of volume, but it's actually only one class of students.
So, Dr. Adrizi, when you're putting together the information requested, what's add Dr. George's part of that, because that will affect how if it's 50, but actually it really is 20, we would like to know that. And if that's just a few things, I don't know, but I think I appreciate the nuance on that.
Yeah,
And that is the data I gave you that's in the memo right now, or yeah? Okay.
it is. Yeah, so we have 50% of the courses, but then we're looking at the sections. We have 34% of sections.
So that it presents a very different picture. It's not half of your classes that are semester based. It's a little over 30%. that
So
are
I think it would be
semester-based.
helpful when we're doing the follow-up here that we maybe isolate, it's a rich memo and much, very, very much appreciated, but maybe we can isolate certain things to help distill for us. It's not a criticism, it's just, we're just distilling on it. I appreciate it very much.
Mr. Dowdy, I have one more question.
Absolutely. Ms. Siegel.
And this kind of involves the question that came from our audience member. As a parent who has children both in athletics and in fine arts, I know there are a lot of kind of pre-season things that happen from an athletic standpoint and from music standpoint, like band camp and other things. Was that, I mean, were they consulted on this, like what they'll do for the different camps in the summertime beforehand? How will they do that? Will the kids have to, you know, come back early for those types of camps? I mean, how was that resolved?
I'm very lucky that I have a coach, NCIS for fine arts here, who would be happy to answer the question. Are you okay with that one? For the sports.
And may I add a addendum to that question, IHSA rules.
Yeah.
As well too, is
Yeah.
probably impact that, and also any rules, I don't know if that applies to the fine arts as well too, but I know they start practicing early.
So each year the IHSA has a 5-year calendar. So next year is August, coming up here is August 12th, 11, 10, 9, and so forth. So if you started school the 14th, the only difference is for the older level players, the varsity players, instead of having like as many 2-session class practices that you normally would have, you can still do that, but most it'll be more single but longer practice at the end of a school day. It really helps, believe it or not. I coach lower levels too. It's hard in football especially. Well, we don't see a student till August 25th and they're not eligible to week 3 because there's a rule of 12 practices to play. If school starts a little earlier, we can find the kids that come out and sometimes be eligible to play right away. We don't get to see it. It helps with numbers, believe it or not, long term. As a coach, that's a big deal. In terms of coaches adapt. So if we know in advance, you know, this is what your schedule is, then nothing else changes. The more of these successful programs that have gone downstate and so forth, they're starting on these calendars. So it's not, there's not a difference in terms of that, to be honest with you. Personally, in terms of younger players, freshman and sophomore, we'll get to see the kids and, hey, oh, football started. Oh, some kids didn't come to summer camp. So now you're getting more kids in terms of that as an example. So there is a difference now.
Okay, so if I understand correctly, basically
Also,
they wouldn't have the week-long camp. Instead, they're gonna have practice after school instead. Is
No.
that what you mean?
So
I'm
no,
confused.
I'm sorry. So if we like this, if this were, let's say August 14th, I'm throwing a date out.
Right.
Okay. A lot of times the official days football can start from 8 to 12, depending on the day. So you can
Right.
still have, they always give you a full week and as early as possible, the IHSA. So let's say it's August 8th or 9th, that full week. So that part won't change as much. It's that second week could be different in terms of when you see the students.
Okay, so
it-
then it would be after school. That's what I'm
Yeah,
trying to understand.
it'll switch from that as opposed to a pure, yes.
Okay, so the first week, where the camp was typically 2 weeks, you're saying the camp will be now 1 week and then they'll practice after school. Okay, got it. That's what I want to understand.
And
Okay.
also on a different level with younger players, sometimes getting a ride to practice, they miss practice because they can't get a ride from their families to go. So if they're in school, we eliminate that. I mean,
Yeah, that's,
selfishly.
no, that's nice.
Selfish, I'm gonna be as a coach, I'm like, hey, you're here.
That's
I
nice. That's
don't, that's never
practical.
mentioned, but that does make impact.
Okay, thank you for that. And then on the fine arts side,
Yeah, and providing input on the committee, also from the athletic side was John Catalano from Glenbrook North High School. He and Tom Metis obviously work together, communicate together all the time. And John echoed those same points that Paul was briefing you on. From the fine arts standpoint, in my role on the committee, I was there as an intern, but participating in the committee was Chad Davidson, the instructional supervisor for fine arts at Glenbrook North High School, and Mark Moranto, our assistant principal for student activities at Glenbrook South, who was also at one point in time the fine arts IS at GBS. Both contributed significantly in providing feedback on potential impacts. As we discussed, what that might look like and how calendar change might shift some of the performance opportunities currently enjoyed by our students. The reality is that conversation also continued to come back to what does the end of the semester look like? And how does that impact scheduling for activities and fine arts related performances? To maybe address one specific concern that I heard regarding band camp before school starts. Band camps are traditionally scheduled during the IHSA Dead Week because we have many students in band that participate in school athletics. And we want them to do that. You know, we want our students to be participating in a wide breadth of activities. The IHSA Dead Week won't change based off of the Glenbrook calendar,
Okay.
which means that when we're able to schedule a band camp for our students to be able to participate, really won't change. We'll still be looking to schedule during that same time. We might have to work with our individual buildings for potential accommodations, depending on when like freshman orientation might be scheduled. But that's something that is very easily workable for our programs and is all about really collaboration within the building and making sure that we're providing all of those opportunities for our students. One thing I did touch on earlier as well is the importance, I think we have to acknowledge that our performing arts programs are very active in our communities in both Glenview and Northbrook. Those are things that our community expects of us. They're traditions that are important not just to GBS or GBN, they're important to the Glenbrooks as a whole. That is something that we would, again, really have to take a close look at to understand what can we do, what kinds of adjustments might we need to make, and again, how does the ending of the semester, how does the conclusion, those final activities for a semester, how might that impact our scheduling in community-based performances?
Yeah, so you would anticipate that some of those performances, the timing of them may change based on this change, right?
That is certainly a possibility.
Okay.
With our current practices of using a specialized schedule during creating a finals week, you know, that can possibly shift where we are scheduling performances. It's really, I'd say, all about future considerations for the district on the whole, and you know, what this organization feels best suits the needs of our students and families.
Okay, thank you again for doing this. I think no matter, you know, what decision we make, you're never going to make everybody happy, right? That's just the way it's going to be. So, but thank you for that.
Bruce, if I can add one point to Michelle's point, when we make the change, whatever change we make, I think the first couple of years, it's important for everybody to be mindful that it's a period of change. So for coaches, for people in fine arts, for the performances that we do in the break, to understand that the calendar has shifted doesn't mean that everything has to shift or not. And for people who are leading these kind of activities, to be more mindful and seeing what can be improved while we're making the change. So if we can keep things the way they were for people who talking about the performances at the end of the year, or you mentioned it, the case of the Dead Week for the fine arts camp. So some things are going to stay the same, and some things that may change may still have some wiggle room, so you know people can adapt. So we may have to keep hammering the message for the community, and it's like it's not the end of the world. It's just we're trying. At the end of the day, we're trying to get something that academically is going to support our students, which is the main reason students are coming to high school, and at the same time trying to contribute to their well-being overall. So as I said earlier, this has been asked for a long time, and the survey says 80%. I think there's at least significant support from the people that participate.
Oh, I was going to say, since I was asking for other addendums to the report, the last one. On the chart table 4, can you note which ones have a winter concert performance? I know Palatine has a wonderful concert. We go toe to toe with them. New Trier does, and I think the Mains do as well too. But it'd be helpful to know we can learn from these people. They've kind of taken the first step. How do they adjust their programs and stuff? And that could be a helpful model as we're examining all of this.
Ms. Melnick.
I'm really looking forward to seeing some of the data about the semester-long classes and getting that detail. Just from what I've heard, though, it sounds like a lot of these classes are the ones that we've talked about before, that we want to, encourage the kids to dabble and try things and not make a commitment to something for, take that fine arts class, take the broadcasting class, fit it into your schedule, even though you also have to apply to college. I understand, they're trying to balance so much. And I think the semester classes encourages them to try something different, make the effort to reach out and do something that maybe is not, right down the line of AP classes, and I feel like for our kids, for lots of different reasons, I think that's a really important avenue for them and, option for them. So I do think that the semester long classes, protecting them and making sure that they are still available in a way that is not compromised is really important.
Thank you, Ms. Melnick. Any other questions, folks? I can just hit that. So Dr. Rizzi, first of all, I'm glad that you want to pop up here. Yes, please.
Yes, I can definitely speak more on that because ultimately that's one of the things that we really discussed as a student body within student council, within student focus groups, is the fact that our curriculum and our classes, a wide range of classes that we offer here within the Glenbrook community is integral to a lot of what we do here in terms of supporting students and giving students a foundation to explore and learn more about who they are and explore the world. And so when we went to these student focus groups after the survey, we said, on this slide, we're saying, it's either the semester imbalance and when to start the school year. And so ultimately, when we talk about protecting those classes, those semester-long classes, we understood that with students between Glenbrook South and Glenbrook North, there was the consensus that students are willing to move earlier into August in order to protect those semester balances within reason, right? Because the data that we've analyzed is that nearly all of the schools within our surrounding areas have some form of a semester imbalance, whether it's 87, 91, whatever the numbers are, there is some sort of imbalance. And so we understand that an imbalance within reason is feasible to protect the integrity of our courses. And so in order to protect the integrity of our courses, representatives from both Glenbrook South and Glenbrook North, that Dr. Drizzi spearheaded a focus group on that, said that students are willing to go to, within our guidelines, we added this is no earlier than the second full week of August is how students on that front were willing to go in order to protect those one semester classes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for that input. Dr. Drizzi, you want to crawl back up there? All right. So first of all, I'm really glad that we're doing this in 25, 26. We've talked about the need to adjust and not to rush things. I know there's some interest in moving more quickly to some sort of change, but even you can just get, we've got additional information this board wants to hear, which is healthy, as well as we focus on that. So normally we seem to come together on a Wednesday in August, the third week of August, if I remember this right. Is that going to be a moving target in the second week of August, or is it always going to be Wednesday or always Friday or always Thursday?
This is my first year in the Glenbrooks. From what I've heard, this year we
So
started.
you're tabula rasa on this go.
We started this year on a Thursday with a green, blue day and a gold day. So that was favorably received. We also had the freshman orientation. And so the schedule was favorably received this year. I am not sure how it was in past years, but I know I got positive feedback from this year's schedule.
I know we want to maximize the push into the second week, but regular thinking, people, oh, it starts on Wednesday or Thursday is something to consider. I'm sure you've thought about that. For the 4 to 8 days or 2 to 4 blocks or whatever it is, that sounds like serious class time because we know our teachers take that seriously and they can adjust, which is great. But are there other concerns that, other than the obvious ones that got raised, the particular classes we mentioned, driver's ed, but other ones were, say it's something like civics, which is a half a year anyway. Just missing whatever that is, 180 minutes or more of instruction doesn't make a material difference, because I like to think that every minute matters. So how do teachers look at that, and they can adjust? Of course, they can cut certain things.
Yeah.
Or on the other end, we don't talk about this, you suddenly have a longer one, you can add stuff. You can add another unit for 2 or 3 classes. What are the thoughts on that?
There was definitely parts in our future consideration where we need to provide our teachers time to look at that, knowing how much of an imbalance it is so they can prepare for that.
Fair enough. In terms of performing arts, this is one of the areas over the years we've talked about. I know Ms. Sequin raised it. That is a really rich tradition, as you know, sir. And but it's also one that runs out, at least in my personal experience, my own son, pretty darn close, sometimes crawls over that Friday to go into winter break. And so if you ratchet that back, that's a big change. I'm not saying that's the wrong thing or bad thing, but because, well, you could have finals week, which runs up to, say, I'll just choose a number out of the year, the 20th of December, just made that up. Then that's that week before, kids are understandably focused on studying. So it's not just losing the week, it's maybe losing a few days before that, because we have very serious students, which is good. And so that is a material change. And I hear that people are looking ways to work, and I'm sure our community partners, if you go sing at certain facilities, will understand. But I want to make sure we're making those efforts with our community partners too. I assume you've talked about this. Could you maybe just add a little bit to that?
Yeah, definitely. As we have here for our future considerations, there's more than our fine arts are definitely going to be impacted with a change. You listed one of them. There are other areas where we worked with our assistant principal of activities, which could be impacted, some in positive ways, and some would need to be some creative rethinking. Prom, for example, would be then at a different time of that. So that was actually a positive outcome where we said, oh, most of our academic curriculum has been concluded at that time when we're having prom. So that was a positive outcome of this, of the non-academic areas as well as performances. Yes, we would have, when we're making that change, I've been working over the past months very closely with our assistant superintendents for curriculum in our sender district. So they have been aware of that study since the beginning, and the way we are leaning, where the survey results are heading towards. That's something. Also working with our park districts, making them aware and informing them that that change is coming. So I echo what you're saying, taking this slow and looking at 25, 26 to make sure we're communicating this thoroughly, and the reasons behind is also an additional one of our future considerations, to make sure all stakeholders of this community would be aware of a potential change. So we can make those
awareness is
adjustments.
one thing, couldn't agree more.
Mhm.
But continue to work with people.
Yeah.
One of the wonderful things about being in the school district is we have an incredibly supportive community.
Mhm.
From what's 3/4 of their families in the community don't have kids presently. We have great community partners, whether they're working with us on incubator or on support of the fine arts. The giving in this community is amazing, but we work together. So reaching out to partners to make them aware, but then making sure that we continue the communication to what can we do to work together. So it's not just internal. We talk about fine arts internal, but external as well. So this is a long project, even this long study. But if we make changes, as you're suggesting, I want to make sure we have I think you have it, that ethos about we're going to work together as not just to communicate and saying fait accompli, but saying, okay, how we can work together as we make this change together. Because it does affect the community. That's why we brought in center schools. That's why we brought in others. So I want to make sure that we're developing that as well now. And maybe you have, or you've thought that through, but this is a lot of work to this point. But I just want to make sure we're investing in that. We're going to be getting more information for the board and everybody ultimately about the semester-long courses.
Yes.
I would like a little more build up on that. I know you've got a ton in your report, but just what's our planning in terms of interacting with community partners going forward? Okay. Other questions or comments or follow-ups people want? This is a tremendous effort. It sounds like I think we need to gather more information at this point, but we can figure out the scheduling on this. I don't want to delay, but I will make sure we have information. So
Yeah,
everyone's
we have
comfortable.
a really quick turnaround because our next meeting is on Monday. And so Dr. Adrizes can be pretty busy, but we could either bring this back for a discussion with the board and with a vote at the end of that discussion on the 18th.
And if it,
And if
I'm
we
not
need more
saying
time.
we'd extend it, but otherwise we go to April 8th. Okay, fair enough. Okay. Anything else, folks? Okay, this is great work. Thank you for all, and thank you for joining us tonight. And we know it's a long day already, and you got a long week ahead, but to join us this evening, much appreciated. So thanks for all the work.
Thank you.
We move to item 6.2 on our agenda, which is our staffing plan for the coming year. Dr. Johns.
Thank you. The staffing plan is our recommendation from the administration for licensed personnel. It is based on our student course request and then applying any demands or needs that are set forth in individual student and individualized education plans to determine the number of sections necessary to meet student needs within the budgetary parameters of the school district. Each school's operational needs, such as clerical and specialist support, custodial maintenance, student supervision, security, all those pieces guide the recommendation that we're putting forward this evening. So at this point, I'm going to ask Dr. Gravel to walk us through this year's staffing plan.
Certainly. Thank you so much, Dr. Johns. I'd like to get started by saying we have worked over the past several years to get to a point where we are tonight, which is to offer in my words, a single piece of paper, recognizing it's multiple sheets of paper, that presents all of the staffing. Historically, we would present the general education licensed staff or our teaching needs. And then a few weeks later, we would present our special education certified needs. And then later on, we would present our support staff needs. Here, we have worked through a variety of timeline changes in order to present it all in one document. That included a strategic effort heavily taken on by our special education leaders to review IEPs in advance of the staffing process. So we had as good of an understanding as we can have at this point as to what our student needs are. I always like to recognize, though, that a staffing plan, just like any budgetary document, is the administration's best effort to identify what our expenditures will be for the upcoming year. Should we have a student move into the district that requires additional support, for example, the assistance of a one-on-one assistant, that's not built into this plan. We would come back to the board saying we have a specific student need and we need to increase staffing for this purpose. With that said, if you review on the memo starting on page 3, you'll notice our licensed personnel staffing. So these are our teachers and anyone who requires licensure from the state of Illinois by the Illinois State Board of Education to provide services. So that includes, for example, your principals. It includes myself, Dr. Johns. It includes all of our teachers, whether it's driver education, our elective areas, our core, so English, math, science, social studies. And one of the things that you'll notice that we've really tried to do is highlight very clearly what's changing from the 24 academic year, which is ending in June, and what we're going to look at as we start the school year in 2025. A significant amount of the work that happens that gets us to this point is performed directly by our staffing teams, which is led this year by Dr. Scott and Mr. Bill at Glenbrook North and Dr. Georges over at Glenbrook South. This is that concept that we talk about of site-based management within the parameters. And the parameters that we have, the board had worked very diligently to update different parameters for our classes as exhibited within the GEA negotiated agreement. So those are class sizes. We also have different parameters that we operate in, even though these are per se the class sizes within the agreement, these are what our target class sizes are. We also have a variety of different programs to meet students exactly where they are, including different levels within our general education curriculum. We also have a variety of intervention strategies that we've implemented to provide student support, not only within their core academics in different levels, but also outside of the classes as they have free time and availability within the school. One of the things that you'll see here is we have some departments that go down and some departments that come up. An important change that we made last year is these aren't just projections to get to a total amount of FTE that the building can allocate in any which way. This is actually based on the courses that students signed up for. And just on a very high level, you will notice that we have seen a significant interest increase in our STEM areas. So that is certainly within the areas of CTE, certainly in the areas of science as well as mathematics. And as students make those transitions, it means that they're not taking other classes. And so you'll see other areas go down. There's also some consideration that comes into play. We have, in theory, 25% of our students are new each year. Their needs are different. Their interests are different. And so you'll have fluctuations in programs based on what they have been interested in signing up for, and also what their needs are. We see other impacts as students are looking at what they're going to take within our summer school term and so on and so forth. So all of those are presented here. As we also have worked on as a district, we have had two programs historically that have taken place in general within our buildings, but have actually been managed and facilitated by our special education cooperative, True North. Those programs, you'll recall, one is our TLS program. Those programs are coming in-house, meaning we're no longer contracting with True North to have them hire and supervise the employees. We are now hiring and supervising the employees, the professional educators, the support staff that are working with those students. And in order to consolidate everything together, you'll notice that we still have some True North contract services on there. We've updated our FTE sheet, so you see the total amount of individuals in the building, as opposed, again, to saying, oh, here's yet another group of staff that are supporting our students over here. And so you'll see some transitions that have been incorporated into the staffing spreadsheet as we're decreasing our contract services and bringing more of those positions in-house. One specific element that I want to take an opportunity just to point out is at the bottom of the licensed personnel table 2, which again is on page 3, you'll notice that each school has a reserve of 0.5. This was a strategic effort working with the schools, recognizing that there are some changes that we know are going to happen between now and ultimately when we start school in the fall, and also some changes that might happen between first and second semester. And so within our allocations, we've also added a bit of flexibility to the building so that if we get to a situation, I'll use one that came up not too long ago, that rose to the board interest level. We had our highest level of mathematics, calculus BC, where we were seeing classes in excess of 30. And part of the reasons why is because we had expended all of the FTE. Using the reserve, we're able to, when appropriate, let me change the word the principals, when appropriate, have the authority to add an additional section and again, utilize the FTE that's within the overall allocation. Math is one of those areas. We certainly can find those needs in any of our departments as well as in our supportive services. For example, we have seen a growing number of multilingual learners that are joining our community. And some of our multilingual learners required what we would refer to as a sheltered class, a class specifically targeting their needs and supported with language interventions. If an increase in that population happens, then the principals have the flexibility to add a section where it's needed within the core. So that's one element. From an overall picture of licensed personnel, the school district is anticipating a decrease of 1.2 FTE that is specifically attributed to administrative positions at the district office level that will not be filled. So I just want to point that out. So the reductions that you see there are attributed to positions that won't be filled outside of direct student contact, but at the district administration level. Table 3, which is presented on page 4, includes our non-licensed personnel. I just want to take an opportunity and recognize first and foremost that we have a tremendous amount of employees that support the day-to-day operations of our building and also support some of our most vulnerable students that are in need of additional support. These are individuals that do everything from supporting and welcoming our parents or controlling traffic with our security teams in the morning and throughout the school day. It includes our instructional assistants. And remember, we have instructional assistants that provide one-on-one support for students, instructional assistants who provide essential personal hygiene needs for our students that are medically fragile and require that support, individuals that are in many ways experts in areas such as mathematics, English, and so on and so forth that are supporting and working alongside our professional educators. We also have instructional assistants that supervise study halls in different areas and even in-school interventions. We also have our specialists, so our registrars, our schedulers. We have our buildings and grounds team and so on and so forth. So just a real quick shout out to the tremendous work that our support staff does. And you'll see within table 3 that we do show a reduction of 13.5 support staff members. Now, this is a little different than our professional staff in that we see a variety of positions on support staff cycle through attrition. Individuals, we're very fortunate to have a great pipeline. Many of our IAs become certified staff members, become teachers within our district. Others, we are able to benefit from having them with us, and then they go seek another teaching position outside of the district when one opens up. We have strategically, through the great assistance of Mr. Wright at Glenbrook South and Ms. Bonner at Glenbrook North, have reviewed each one of our clerical needs, each one of our IA needs, and we found areas for efficiencies. So by leveraging different efficiency mechanisms, by looking at the natural attrition we have as well as retirements, we do have a recommendation to decrease the amount of individuals that we have with support staff by 13.5. That also directly goes to assist some of the restructuring that we've done within our district, which will bring forth a bit more efficiency and operational effectiveness. So again, high level, 1.2 reduction on the licensed staff attributed to district office FTE changes, 13.5 reduction attributed to support staff efficiencies that have been identified. One of the things that's always important to remember when it comes to staffing recommendations for schools is that it's based on your student enrollment. We are anticipated to see a decline in enrollment by about 100 students. Our statistical significance with respect to our enrollment calculations is pretty sound. We're typically within 2 to 3%. So we anticipate that we will see that decline. We don't see any or anticipate any large housing development that will be completed for next school year. Certainly things can change. And as we've always committed with the board, in general, we don't build a contingency budget. When issues come up, we bring them back to the board, we discuss them and process through. And so with that, that is kind of an overview of the staffing presentation. And certainly Mr. Bo, Dr. Georges, and myself are happy to answer any questions.
Dr. Johns, anything else you want to add to that?
I want to thank the entire cabinet team for their work on this and for those who work with them on a day-to-day basis. It takes an awful lot of work to get to this point. And we have, as a district, when I came, talked about having zero-based budgeting. And we said that, but we didn't have it done for all of our personnel. And we're finally at that point where all personnel are accounted for. We have positional control throughout the district. All of the adds or all of the subtractions that are made on the sheet are really determined by what our students are asking for or what our students need in their IEPs or in for their classwork. So we finally reached a really big milestone here, and the board has asked us to unite. In the past, we had 3 different staffing asks that were made in the spring each year, and we've united them all into one. And they're sound. I think we all have a great deal of faith in these numbers. We've certainly spent I look at Steve and Barb, probably dozens and dozens of hours to get to this point. But we've reached a real milestone here. This is an important marker for our district in that these numbers are real, not just projections. They're based on real demands and needs of our kids.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. Thank you for all the work in this area and for those who may not be sitting here, all their work as well. I want to underscore Dr. Johnson's point, how important it was to have this all at once. So it doesn't seem like a piecemeal thing, oh, more staffing, which no one disparages in its individual, but it's so much easier to see the big picture. That said, I'm going to ask, is there anything else coming?
There are no plans for changes to the staffing pattern right now, with two potential considerations. One, primarily within the area of multilingual learners or special education, if there is a significant change that we are not anticipating right now, or a significant need identified for a student. And then second, it's not going to change the bottom line number as we continue to evaluate the True North incorporation. Ultimately, for example, True North instructional assistants that are identified in the one bucket would become just Glenbrook instructional assistants. So we put it all on one paper. There might be adjustments in the bucket, but overall, no
It's
one.
not expanding. Okay,
Nope.
that's great. It gives us perspective. Obviously, it might have to ad hoc some things. Let me start over here. Ms. Seguin, any questions?
I just want to thank you for all the work. I thought it was very clear and I appreciate it. I don't have
One
any
paper.
questions.
All right. Dr. Steinberg.
Thank you. I echo, it's great to see everything in one virtual sheet of multiple papers.
Fair enough. One packet.
My only comment, and it's just on a quick visual, so probably I'm missing a lot of things, but I hear you when you said, there's student shifting, and so there are more needs in some areas and less needs in other areas. But when you look at the totals at the end, it looks like, I'm sure there are tons of good reasons, but it looks like we're eliminating a lot of positions in table 3, which is non-licensed personnel staffing. And we are eliminating more than that we are adding on the licensed personnel staffing, at least if we don't count the other. And then there's a high imbalance on the positive or plus side on the other group, which is not so related to class by class, but it's more general one. Sure, there's an explanation to it, but because we're talking about number of students in the classroom, all the other changes report directly to one teacher, one class, one teacher, one class. And those numbers seem to be going down in the majority. I mean, if you look at it, the total location for FTEs for license in table 2 on GBN, it's minus 0.4. But then when you look at, we are adding 2 units on main, of course it gets balanced because we are removing 2 on teacher assistants. Again, the relationship of managers versus people that do closer to one-to-one seem to be going on the opposite direction. Again, I'm sure there's a rationale, but for anybody else that look at these numbers would say the same thing. Is we are looking at people who are directly touching the students, the assignments are lower. People who are not directly touching the students, maybe doing some things, and I am an administrator at a different place. I'm not talking against administrator, but the administrative positions seem to be growing compared to the non-administrative position. And there may be tons of good reasons. I'm just saying sometimes when we put numbers, we want to hear that explanation as well. By putting X administrator in particular building, this helps us make more efficient something else. And it may be that you change an administrator allows you to remove 10 clerical positions and the district is better served that way. But I love to see it same way that you spend your time explaining how we are moving through classrooms, the other part should be explained as well. So the people that see these documents don't have to ask the questions. And we can put rationale to it.
Thanks, Dr.
Absolutely.
Steinberg. Mr. Shine, any questions? Nope. Okay, Ms. Mullenbeck?
No, I thought it was actually pretty easy to read, despite the very small print.
I do like my small print.
I guess this is more of a comment really than a question. I was curious to see, given that we've talked so much about how we expect to have so many increased needs with multilingual learners, that we were pretty static. And I think that's maybe a reflection of the decrease in student population, no?
Dr. Jordis, you want to share?
Yeah,
This is good.
I can answer that. So Thankfully, with Dr. Christine Anderson here, she's done a really good job of evaluating the present levels of performance of all our multilingual students. When you look at the line item for the multilingual FTE, that is usually students receiving direct service because they're newcomers or they're level 1 students in multilingual classes. As she's evaluating their performance and improving their performance, they're exiting those multilingual only classes. So they're now embedded within your general education FTE. There might be, for example, a language assisted section of biology, but you would see that under the biology total, not the multilingual total. So it's really good news as our multilingual students are improving their present levels of performance. We'd actually like to see them out in the general education population as much as possible. And that's why you only saw, my memory recalls, only a 0.1 increase because we needed 1 additional semester. Is that 0.1?
That's correct.
Sorry, my computer had timed out. So only a minor increase within the department, but we're seeing the increases spread out across all the courses that our multilingual students are taking.
Well, I'm glad I asked because that does sound like good news. Thank you.
Mr. O'Hara.
Yeah, so real quick, just the reserve then is kind of your fudge factor, right?
It provides increased flexibility for the building principals to meet the needs of students.
Yeah, so you little, I mean, when you got something big like this, you need a little bit of wiggle room, or what do the engineers call it? Some tolerance levels, right?
Yes.
What are the teachers on special assignment? I noticed there's quite a few of them.
So last year's memo actually provided a detailed overview of TOSA's TOSA's teachers on special assignment, and I can share that. In general, we have a variety of teachers that ultimately provide teacher leadership in different areas. So some of our TOSAs are providing direct support. For example, at Glenbrook North, they have a variety of academic support areas, and we have individuals that are using teacher FTE to support those areas and oversee those areas. We have other individuals, for example, our 504 coordinators. They are not administrators, they are TOSAs. So they're 1.0 individuals who focus their entire time on that. A large part of our TOSAs supports the enhancement and progression of supporting our teachers through instructional coaching. So those are individuals that teach one class, but 0.8 of their time is devoted to being an instructional coach. So those are just some areas. In the past, we've had TOSAs. For example, we had teacher deans. Now all of our deans for next school year will be administrators. Those are no longer TOSAs. But our assistant athletic directors that provide significant support during the day and then also after school for supervision, 0.4 of their positions are TOSAs. And we have 0.8 at each building with 2 people kind of filling that role. So those are just some examples, but teacher leadership, oversight and support of specific academic areas.
Okay, and is that a technical term, the TOSA, teacher on special assignment, or it seems like it seems like a weird title for it, I suppose.
It's one of those industry titles to bring everyone together, as opposed to saying coordinators or facilitators or non-teaching positions.
Yeah, it sounds like they're doing an archaeology dig somewhere, you know, when you have that. But okay, and then lastly, I noticed the permanent subs were actually taking 1 off on each. So is that working pretty well? I remember we had that whole conversation, I don't know, 2 years ago or something.
We did. And so one of the things that we've been working very diligently to refine is what exactly is our need. If you actually look at our substitute needs in general, we have a pretty significant substitute need in the area of our instructional assistants, especially in our area of special education for one-on-one aids, because ultimately, if an IA is out, you have a legal obligation to provide that one-on-one assistant before just providing a general IA substitute. And so as we've been improving overall operational effectiveness, I won't call it efficiency, effectiveness, we've identified where our actual needs are. And while there is still a benefit to the building to have individuals who are licensed, who can fill any role, the number we started with isn't where we ultimately needed to end up, meaning we didn't have enough absences on a consistent basis to fill them out 100%. We certainly do still have a challenge that we're navigating in the IA space and where we need to provide additional support, that's where those IA managers will come into play and help us really identify what the needs are. We've been very fortunate through Ms. Romano's work and the work of her team to have a very stable substitute pool. And when the external substitute pool and our internal substitutes are, our permanent substitutes are not available, we have a lot of teachers, especially for content, very technical content courses. We also have teachers that are willing to step up and serve as internal substitutes to cover for colleagues and things of that nature. So the balance of all three has allowed us to meet our needs.
Okay, I love to see you guys are sort of working through that because we started as a pilot program, and I love to see you guys are working through it and if making it efficient, if you don't want to use that word, effective, whatever. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Mr. Glowacki.
I appreciate, along with my colleagues, all the great work to get this all into one cohesive summary and everything, so we can see the big picture. I had similar questions along with my colleague about what the permanent substitutes were versus the TOSAs and everything, because the other part of that discussion, though, that I guess I'm a little concerned about is that was also in part due to our anticipating a teacher shortage, as we have a number of people retiring in the district and we're using the permanent sub program to help develop that pipeline and everything. So as we're evaluating based on current needs, how is this evaluated in comparison to that pipeline?
Yeah, I would say at the end of the day, the pipeline consideration was a benefit of establishing permanent substitutes. But ultimately, we've been focused on just meeting the needs, some of which are with individuals who just decided they didn't want to be a full-time teacher per se, but they were very interested in this flexible assignment. Other individuals, we have had situations where we've had part-time teachers that have filled out their role by filling some of these permanent subs. So to directly answer your question, I can't say that the permanent substitutes in our ultimate implementation and through the recruitment process has led to a pipeline, but it has led to ability to keep part-time educators here for filling out in some situations and find highly qualified individuals who have a full teaching background. Some have prior teaching experience, but wanted more flexibility in their design of structure.
Well, this is where I would challenge the administration to try to keep focus on that pipeline. This was our effort to try to stay ahead of the anticipated issues that we're been, I guess, warned about now for a couple of years that we'll be facing with people retiring and everything. So if we were in good shape with managing the program and you've got that, I would use this opportunity next year to take a look at what do we need to be doing here to make sure we're staying ahead of the problems we're anticipating. The other one that I was a little concerned about seeing a decrease on security personnel, because that seems to be an issue that is on the rise with more and more issues. And it's
Yeah.
not necessarily tied directly to the number of students as much as square footage and what you have to cover.
Thank you for pointing out. I'm sorry I didn't clarify that earlier. The board may recall a few months ago, I want to say in October or November, the board entered into a memorandum of agreement with our paraprofessional, formerly Paraprofessional Association, now our security association, which ultimately resulted in an elimination of positions that only worked after hours. We transitioned away from that and worked with GESPA to navigate it because we couldn't find individuals to fill those jobs. So what we did was we said, okay, any work that's done outside of the school day is general supervision work. So existing security staff can pick it up. Some of our clerical staff can pick it up. Anyone who is familiar with the buildings can pick up those roles. And so while it shows a reduction in FTE, the funds were repurposed for hourly overtime or hourly supervisory costs.
Would that be an increase in an FTE or?
No, it's a decrease in FTE, but the same funds are just reallocated in a different budget line.
All right, so that means the FTE doesn't really equate to savings here. Changes in FTEs.
Correct. This was a budgetary adjustment.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Shine.
Thank you. I'd like to just restate my general level of kind of queasiness and discomfort with moving resources into administration in general. I respect the administration and wanting to create better systems and more organization, but some of these are pretty high cost salaries. And I guess I'm in the show me mode of what the benefits of these really are. It feels like a lot of resources coming from areas that could work directly with kids. That being said, and when I looked at this, I looked at like the total overall change in FTE, and I'm sort of like, oh, that's good. I didn't really focus in on these so much on the specific green squares in here. Thank you. So what I would appreciate is just when you respond to some of this, the other board members' questions, if you just highlight each one of these admins that's added, what the title is, and if you know the salary or whatever of these various positions. Is this something we, when we say these are added, so we have like the main office ones, we have administrative general, we have, there's just quite a few in the admins on both pages. So I'd like to.
Yeah, so for example, in the main office, we now have, or for the 24-25 school year, we'll have an associate principal of student support, which is part of a larger restructuring. So that is a increase. In the general, that's referring on the licensed staff, that's referring to our transition and having an individual serve as an LEA or an LEA/compliance supervisor to oversee special education, IEP compliance and writing and things of that nature. And then on the non-licensed staffing side for administration, those are your IA managers. So we had no one overseeing IAs on a consistent basis building wide, and now there will be someone working with the associate principal for operations and student experiences and doing that. So those are the individuals. None of those positions have been hired right now. They are posted, and we are going through the recruitment process, but we can follow up with that.
So the one that we did hire the central office, did we not? That used the title principal, but it was a little confusing. Right, so you're adding somebody at central office where the title was like a little bit confusing. And then that person is overseeing down at the schools.
We had the role last
former
year.
Roseanne position, which was kind of restructured.
Oh, the grants position. No.
Dr. Cummings, you think, is that what you're talking about?
No, you added a central office that has direct reports from the school.
So then, if I understand correctly, that would be the Stacy Wolf position, that's special ed, in which she was both an instructional supervisor and an assistant director.
So putting aside the specifics, Mr. Shine, what are you trying to, just raising it as an example, or? I
guess I'd like to have better clarity on all of the administrative positions and the proposed where that is salary wise. If we don't know if we don't know the person, fine. But we're
I can offer you a salary range for each new
something
position, sure.
Because you could, let's say, drop 10 FTEs of $18 associates, but you wouldn't see that as in the dollar side of it if you bring in a higher priced, which of course you're going to do, like certified person who's now a 15-year administrator versus, an hourly, 5 hourlies, 10. You see what I'm saying? Maybe not. They're teeter-totter at this bucket with a few things that are real heavy versus over here with a lot of things that are really light. So yes. FTE wise, it looks like a substantial, you're saying you're dropping, because you're looking confused. The memo says we're dropping 13 FTEs, right?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. So when I looked at this at first, I thought, oh, commensurate cost. I'm sort of thinking 13 FTEs in my head. No, that's really not what's happening. It's just not.
Because
the cost, because we're adding.
There's two columns, right?
We're adding many more
increase.
expensive people and reducing a larger number of less costly people, which is fine. You guys are organizing the ship here. But it's unclear when I look at this, and it threw me, I didn't get it at first. So we're adding into the administrative side, and we received a rationale that we needed that because we didn't have the management systems.
Yes. So if I understand, you'd like to see those positions, both on the green side and the pink side, costed out at a dollar value, essentially a teacher.
Is within the reasonable accuracy we can.
Yeah.
Because you're saying, we haven't hired all these people, so we don't know, but you have a range.
Mhm.
And when you lay out the salary plan every year, you don't know exactly. You range and it kind of dials in because some are a little more expensive, some are less costly, and it just sort of gets there.
If I can add one more point, we always use the example when an older teacher retires and a new teacher comes. If you look at FTE, that's neutral, right? +1 and -1. But we save a lot of money because the salary of the older teacher is larger than the newer teacher. So you can do the same argument of we reduce to pick the lowest FTE that you find there, reduce 4 of those, and add only 1 FTE of a superintendent, just to use playfully, I guess, the most extreme example that you can get. Are we saving money? Meaning when we look at the total, we say -3, but what is the representation of that -3? Right?
No,
It may be the opposite of what we are seeing.
I think what you're hearing in different ways is the FTE numbers are important, but the other part of the picture is the overall cost. And if the cost is neutral, is it going up, is it going down?
It's a reduction.
It's going down, no, but that's actually an important point because we of course trust you to organize the FTE and do all the incredible hard work just the way over the classes, but ultimately we want to know the cost in terms of the overall budgetary governance issue that we have.
Yeah.
So, and I'm sure that easily you have all those numbers, you just got to put them in.
Yeah, we can compile from some prior correspondence to tables and share them out. That's not a problem.
That'd be great.
Not a problem at all.
Other questions, comments? I just have with the contingency, and I remember it was back in finance committee days where we have dropped contingencies and drop them. I don't sit on finance anymore, but they went to 0 at some point. And so I have no problem with fudge, but because it's coming probably, and you can either ad hoc it or you can build it in. But if we don't use the contingency, does it get kicked back financially? Is it a savings? Does it move forward? I'm just thinking, how do you deal with that at a, not minute, but sort of global financial level?
From a budgetary level, we budget it. We don't budget it in a certain program because we don't know what program
Right,
it's
right,
in.
right,
So
right.
it actually gets budgeted into the principal's office.
Sure.
And if it is not filled, it means that our expenditures are less than the revenues, but that the resources there are not accessible to anyone except Ms. Tarver, to be exact. And so it's not like it will be repurposed. It just will not.
No, if it's
be
a savings, it should be a savings. I'm just
Correct.
sort of keeping it at a very high level. Okay, cool. Any other questions, thoughts? Where do we go from here on this? Is this more information just to provide the board or?
Well, this information is used to make some other decisions that are coming up, some
Okay.
of which we'll talk about in closed.
Okay,
and
dokie.
Then we'll move forward. So we
Okay.
have a vote next week on this. And then we'll continue with our actual hiring that goes along with these positions, or the difficult decisions that might come from those positions that we're not sustaining.
Okay, so if we're gonna even think about going towards votes next week, then we want to make sure we assemble all this, obviously. And you're not the only one getting a new assignment, sorry. We have company now. But thank you for all this, and we'll have lots to read, folks, before the meeting. Okay, wonderful. Anything else? Hearing nothing, we move to summary of our meeting. We did have one speaker this evening regarding the calendar, which was followed by the discussion. We had, as always, wonderful reports about work with our students and food drives, athletic accomplishments of various levels, working with colleges, activities, debate, a science magazine article, I think, that Mr. Bill's going to report back on. next week. And always good to hear all those news. We'll have our consent agenda passed. And then we talked about two issues, the school calendar study, which we're going to hear back some more information about, which we greatly appreciate all the work in the presentation, and then the staffing plan. Thank you for all the work on that. We'll get some more information on that as well. Item 8, if you have possible topics for future board meetings, please do let me or Dr. Johns know. And item 9 is closed session. We do have closed session tonight, which I think is relatively brief, to consider the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body or legal counsel for the public body, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee of the public body or against legal counsel for the public body to determine its validity pursuant to Section 2C1 of the Open Meetings Act.
So moved.
All in favor? Sorry.
Aye. Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Okay, so we can, do we need, I think it's very short, right?
Very short.
Do you want to take minutes? Do you want to just wait? Anyone?
Everybody, you have to excuse anybody.
I always just to keep trying to be fair. All right.
Do you have to excuse anybody?
Let's see. Not bad.
7:30.
And Mr. Doughty, we are back.
We are on item 10, adjournment. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0.